Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel Revision Recharge. I hope you're all doing well. Lots of students messaged me and left loads of comments under my last video about unseen poetry. So I decided to make a quick video just talking about all the ways you can steal marks from examiners. I feel that it's such a shame that loads of students don't know these tips and tricks that I've learned. So I really wanted to share them with you all. If you found this video useful, make sure you like and subscribe. Let's get into it. So for AQA Unseen Poetry, this is going to appear in your paper 2. Paper 2 is titled Modern Texts and Poetry. In this paper, there are basically 2 questions to do with unseen poetry. The first question will be worth 24 marks, and the question is all about analysing a specific theme for an unknown poem. So as you can see on the screen, I've put some examples from June 2017, 2018 and 2019 to give you a brief example of what type of questions can come up. As you can see, each question is formatted in the exact same way. Now, the key thing that students need to identify here is that they're talking specifically about how the poet presents a specific theme or attitude. Question 2 is worth 8 marks. In this question, what you need to do is compare poems using the same theme from question 1. So on the screen, you can now see question 1 and question 2 examples from past papers. The biggest hack here is the strategy that you use to answer these exam questions when you're sitting your test. As you can see, question 1 is worth 3 times the amount of marks as question 2. So let's say you're planning to write 3 paragraphs for each question, so 6 paragraphs in total. What you want to do is spend sufficient amount of time annotating the first poem. So essentially you're going to make about 10 pieces of annotations. From those 10 pieces of annotations, you'll probably use about 3 to 5 in your first question. This would then mean that you have about 5 annotations left over that you haven't used in question 1. You can now use these annotations in question 2 instead. So essentially what you've done is saved yourself a lot of time, because now when it gets to question 2, instead of going back to poem 1 to re-annotate, you can focus solely on the second unseen poem and trying to identify similarities and differences. So now on to what examiners want to see. To get a better insight into the examiner's brains, what you need to do is actually read the examiner's reports. Lucky for you, I've done all the hard work for you, I've read through them and I've picked out all the key points that I think students often miss out. Some of these tips you might already know, but they're still equally as important. The first thing the examiner wants to see is your sensitivity to the mood and tone. So what does the exam board mean by sensitivity? To figure this out, let's look at the definition of the word sensitive. It has 2 meanings when I search it up online. The first meaning is to be quick to detect or respond to slight changes, signals or influences. So the examiner wants to see that first of all you can actually identify what the mood or tone of the poem is, and secondly they want to see you can identify if there's any changes in the mood or tone. The second definition of sensitive is to have or display a quick and delicate appreciation of others' feelings. Essentially this means, can you identify what the impact would be on the reader? A common misconception by loads of students is that you need to fully understand what the poem is saying. However, in the time given in the exam, this is nearly impossible to do so. To get the top marks, you simply need to understand what is the mood. Is it happy? Is it sad? Is it angry? Is it disappointed? And then incorporate this into your answer. The second thing that examiners want to see is that you're using relevant points on structure and form. One of the key things on the examiner reports is that students are often not explaining why the structural or form technique that they've chosen is relevant to the question. To get this mark, all you need to do is make sure you are linking your answer specifically back to the key theme mentioned in the question. The third thing that examiners want to see is your comments. It is simply not good enough just to state quotes or language techniques without giving your own opinion on why the poet has used those. A big chunk of the marks that the examiners gives out is specifically for your analysis. Like I said in my previous video, as long as you're able to justify why you picked a specific quote or language technique, you will be able to bag these marks. Now, the fourth thing that examiners want to see is something that they actually can't see at all, but it was mentioned quite a lot in all the examiner reports. It is best that you leave section C to the end. I've met quite a few students that have decided to actually do the paper backwards, so starting in section C, then doing section B, and then doing section A. Whilst this may seem smart to them, it is not a technique that I would recommend. In fact, in the examiner report, it says, writing about something you are familiar with in section A and B will often help you to get started, and by the time you get to section C, your brain will be working much more efficiently and you'll be ready to tackle the unseen text. This is just a recommendation. You can approach the paper in any order that you would like, But if the examiner hints that you should probably do it from section A to C, I would probably go with that. The last, but arguably the most important tip that was mentioned in every single examiner's report was that AO2 is key. Students really need to focus on the poet's ways outlined specifically in the question. The key part of the question is, how does the poet present? And the only way to unlock these marks is to focus on the ways that the poet has explored a specific attitude or theme. There are several different ways to do this. I've just listed 8 of the most important ones. And this actually really helps when it comes to annotating the poem. If you're a student that gets to an unseen poem and doesn't know where to start, these 8 steps will help you break down your annotation. I will soon be posting a YouTube video focusing on these 8 different ways. I thought it would be really useful for you to see an example of when AO2 has been used. So using question 2 from the June 2018 paper, the question focuses on 2 unseen poems and how the speakers describe their attitudes to the effects of growing old. The question, of course, wants you to explore the similarities and differences in the ways the poet has presented these attitudes. So I've put 2 examples of 2 responses to the same question, an AO1 response and an AO2 response. Let's specifically focus on the AO2 response. As you can see, it includes exactly the same information as the AO1 response with added extras highlighted in blue. The key differences between the 2 responses is that the AO2 response first of all states the language technique that was used, aka the simile or the image, and then it goes on to state the impact of the poet's techniques. So just by making a few tweaks to your answers, you can basically boost your grade a lot. To finish off, I'm going to go through what examiners hate to see. There were 3 key things that were mentioned on the examiner's reports. The first thing was vague details about the poet's autobiographical details. In section C of the paper, you do not want to be focusing on anything to do about the poet's background, lifestyle, or even historical period, because it's very unlikely that you will know this information based on the poem alone. The only exception to this is when the poem is set in a specific historical period that is explicitly stated in the poem. For example, if the poem is about war and it specifically mentions World War II, then it's acceptable for you to use any prior background knowledge. The second thing that examiners hate to see is when you write about a theme in general without saying how it was used in the poem. So really try to avoid going on tangents about the theme. And the last thing is, the examiner doesn't want you just to spot features. When you're identifying language, structure, or form techniques, make sure you discuss the effect on the poem and on the reader. Thank you for watching this video. My Unseen Poetry booklet is available for free on my website, and it has more details about how to answer and tackle unseen poetry. If you found this video useful, make sure you like, comment and subscribe. See you in the next video.